One trait unique to video game music as a genre is the need for it to be able to repeat smoothly for an indefinite amount of time, as the developers and composers can never predict exactly how long it will take for a player to complete a level in a game. This often results in A, pieces that are made up of two or more sections that transition smoothly into each other so that the music can jump back to the beginning of a song without the player noticing. B, pieces that avoid any sort of real resolution or sense of finality so that it never sounds weird when it doesn't end. Or C, if all else fails, tunes with a big drum break that bring you back to the top of a song. While I would say this is an attribute of game music in general, there are of course exceptions. One such exception, suggested by patron Lars Flieger for April's patron request video, the highest reward tier for supporters over on my Patreon page, wink wink, is found in the flight levels of Kid Icarus Uprising. These levels have the player shooting enemies while flying on a rail without being able to control how fast or slow they move through each challenge. This allowed the composers of the game's soundtrack to write music that didn't have to repeat itself indefinitely, and it allowed them to be able to score individual parts of these levels rather than creating a piece that fit the general vibe of the whole level all the way through. Today I'm going to talk through one of Uprising's flight levels, namely Chapter 12, Wrath of the Reset Bomb. There's some cool ways that the composer, Yuzo Koshiro, scores this level, taking advantage of knowing exactly when the player is going to face each challenge or set piece. First, word painting. Word painting is a compositional technique where the lyrics to a song are symbolically represented in the music itself. While there are no lyrics to the music found in Kid Icarus Uprising, the character's dialogue extends throughout each level, so there are lots of opportunities to reflect this dialogue and the new information it presents the player musically. Our first example of this comes as Palutena's presentation of an opportunity is mirrored in the uplifting turn the music takes in section B. The minor 1 to major 4 progression is all over heroic and fantastical film scores, and it sounds particularly hopeful here in contrast to the sliding, chromatic minor chords that made up the music up until this point. At the mention of the reset bomb, the music modulates up a whole step to reflect Pit's realization of this new information. This is a little bit abstract, and maybe it doesn't fall into the category of word painting, but to me it feels kind of like a zoom in on a character in a movie. It's just a little bump to show that a character is learning new information. The moment we actually get to see the reset bomb is scored appropriately dramatically too. Leading up to the big reveal, we get these heavy C's in the bass, with a quick minor third making sure they sound good and ominous as they grow in intensity up until this point. When the bomb finally shows itself here, this quick zoom is scored with a jolting tritone line in the strings, echoed in the trumpet a couple beats later. The tritone interval's instability is perfectly suited for scoring this kind of shocking reveal. The C section shows us some of Pit's heroic resolve to put a stop to this catastrophe, with the melody being taken over by a solo trombone accompanied by these light triplets in the strings. Giving the melody to a solo brass instrument is also used all over film scores to symbolize heroism. Take note of this melody in the winds that comes right after, because it gets used in a few different and cool ways throughout this piece. It's pretty typical for a hero melody, featuring some strong 4th and 5th leaps as well as being constructed almost entirely out of the tonic arpeggio, but I like the way it jumps up to the F here for a little 4-3 Appoggiatura. An appoggiatura is a colorful melodic technique in which the melody lands hard on a note that isn't in the underlying chord before resolving up or down a step to a nice stable chord tone. These typically come in the 2-to-1, 4 to 3, 6 to 5, and 7 to 8 varieties, and they're a really powerful emotional melodic tool. Anyways, as we get closer to the reset bomb, the D section kicks in with its dissonant rhythmic stabs of a C-sharp diminished major 7 chord. This is another great dramatic choice. Diminished chords are naturally very unstable, but adding the major 7 adds a little more of an edge, and keeps it from sounding like stock, something bad is happening, diminished music. It actually kind of gives me Rite of Spring vibes a little bit. As Palutena explains how to destroy the bomb and the player begins the process of doing so, the music moves into our E section. Sections E through G play over the actual battle with the reset bomb, but here's where we break off from our predetermined composition to get a small look into the world of interactive music. As this section of the level isn't on a rail, it's up to the player how long it takes to actually stop the bomb. So, when the player does end up beating the bomb, no matter where we are in this tune, the music abruptly cuts off as the bomb explodes and Pit displays his poor grasp of the English language.
Yeah! Destructimated!
I don't believe this!
After this brief pause, we jump to this break right before section H, where the timpani, snare drum, and cymbals give us a big crescendo roll leading into the next section. To celebrate the success against the reset bomb, Section H presents us with some typical video game victory music, with our C section's heroic melody adapted to fit over a series of rising major chords. Notice the use of the flat 3 chord here, because it wouldn't be a victory theme without using some mode mixture. I like the way this section gradually transitions from victory music back to its former intensity. After Pit blows up the reset bomb, he's tasked to find and enter the reset bomb factory to prevent similar future catastrophes. As he gets closer to the factory, the music gets more and more intense before we get another big reveal when he actually reaches it. The series of rising chords from the victory music leads up to this G chord, which transitions nicely into this 1 minor 4-1 riff in the key of G. This mode mixture introduces a little bit of darkness to the music, which is then compounded as the whole riff is modulated up a tritone. This transitions us from our triumphant victory music into the simmering tension of the I section, which again uses our heroic theme a little more ominously. We're going to see this heroic melody violated a couple more times before the piece is over, and this triplet string riff over the staccato bass actually foreshadows a later section, but we'll talk about that later. For now, check out how this 4 to 5 build rudely subverts our expectations by moving to a sharp 6 diminished chord, and how the melody changes to adapt to this new chord change. We get a series of dramatic crescendos at this point, starting with this chromatically rising line that begins in the bass and gradually includes the whole string section. This builds even higher with this crescendo over a G diminished chord that leads up to the big reveal of the reset bomb depot. The actual reveal is dramatically scored with these huge triads in the trumpets playing over these sweeping string arpeggios. These 4 bars are harmonized as an E-flat major 7 augmented chord, which I think is amazing. It's such an otherworldly sound, and it's used so much less often than diminished or altered dominant type sounds that it doesn't feel like a stock musical choice at all. Flying around the actual depot itself is accompanied by the K section, making use of the string accompaniment figure we heard as we were transitioning out of our victory music I mentioned earlier. My favorite part of this section is the melody. It's like a hybrid of the heroic melodic figure I talked about earlier and that hopeful sounding melody we heard way back in the B section. See how the structure of the fifth leap up and the stepwise motion down echoes the first two bars of the B section melody, and then on the repeat, it transitions seamlessly into this triplet melodic figure from our heroic theme? This is cool on its own, separated from the underlying harmony, but when you add the melody and the accompaniment figure together, it starts getting really interesting. Isolated, the melody seems to be in G minor, but the strings recontextualize it as outlining an E-flat Lydian type sound. This way it hits all of those colorful extensions, including the slightly off-sounding but in a good way E natural in the third and fourth bar. Is this an example of polytonality? Or maybe an example of super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian in action? Either way, it adds beautifully to the simmering tension bubbling just underneath the surface of the music, ready to explode at any moment. And explode it does, as after this we get this gradually crescendoing section with these major thirds bouncing chromatically around over a G pedal until this enormous G augmented chord is pounding away as Pit gets chucked into the reset bomb factory to begin the ground section of the level. So, as you can see, this piece was not designed to loop or repeat itself in any way, and that actually allowed the music to better reflect the action on screen. Hopefully you guys found that as interesting as I did. Thanks to patron Lars Flieger for requesting the topic, and if you guys are interested, you should check out his YouTube video analyzing the soundtrack of 2005's La Mulana, which features some interesting uses of leitmotifs throughout the soundtrack. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. If you're interested in supporting the channel or maybe making a request of your own, feel free to check out my Patreon page. Patrons get access to early videos, all my transcriptions, as well as the aforementioned request-making opportunity. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below or tweet me at 8BitMusicTheory, and thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time!